Hey guys, JoJo here in the Woman Cave. So yesterday I went to go check out that movie, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and it was creepy, guys. It's an adaptation of the creepy looking chapter books. Oh my gosh, I remember reading those things like under the blankets, all like creeped out. Gonna be talking spoilers here, so if you haven't watched it, I'd suggest to come back to the video whenever you get a chance. No big deal. So anyways, guys, let's get into it. The director, his name's Andre Overdahl. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Hopefully I did. And if you didn't already know, it was also produced and co-written by one of the great masters of current horror, Guillermo del Toro. So of course I had to go support my fellow Latino filmmakers. What? You can definitely tell that he had a hand in bringing all these horrific monsters to life. They were so gruesome, creepy looking. There were so many jump scares involving the monsters as well. It was beautifully done. Really enjoyed the aesthetic of the entire movie, just the look and feel of it. There was this like grittiness to it, obviously dark tones. I mean, it's a horror, of course it's going to be dark, but there was just an extra layer of like realism to it. The monsters looked real. There was definitely some CGI going on, but I also saw a lot of practical effects. Yeah, that was something that I really liked about this movie. Aside from the monsters and ghosts in this movie, I really loved the fact that the story itself was kind of rooted in the midst of the counterculture in 1968. So this was actually a period piece, and they did such a great job in conveying that. With when it came to soundtrack was awesome. You had that like classic rock in the beginning, really cool. The set design told a story in itself, and that's really how you knew it was the 60s. Like, you enter Stella's room, who's our main protagonist, and you know, she's a teen girl. She's got that angst. She's kind of a loner in a way. I mean, she's got friends, but you can tell that she hangs out in her room alone a lot. What's really cool about it is that she's a horror fan herself. Her room is just filled with like horror knickknacks, horror posters. It kind of reminded me of myself, or someone I could definitely get along with. But anyways, she was a very likable character, and you kind of feel sympathetic for her because her family's not perfect. Her mom left and just abandoned them, her and her dad. So you know, the story is about her kind of overcoming the guilt because she feels guilty that her mom left, and she thinks she did something wrong. So with the few friends she does have, she goes to the haunted house, of course, cliche as it is. But yeah, and then all the trouble ensues from there. So I'm not going to go into full detail, but obviously, you know, they do find the storybook written by Sarah. So yeah, if you guys have ever read the chapter books, you kind of know what kind of stories to expect from that storybook. So this wasn't just a superficial, like, run-of-the-mill ghost story with jump scares, guys. What I really liked about it was that the story itself was kind of rooted in the counterculture, as I said earlier. It was during a time that our country was seeing a lot of negativity everywhere you looked. Racism was super prominent at the time. You got the Vietnam War going on. You know, you had the draft happening. So it was definitely a difficult time, and it was also a time where families were not the perfect, like, nuclear family from the 50s. You know, people were starting to get, you know, divorced, and families were starting to split up. It was no longer that pristine kind of image, that facade from the generation before. So you saw that in this movie. You saw the teens struggle through all that. There was one kid, he was a Mexican kid, and he was kind of dodging the draft, and he was just scared because his brother had passed away, and he was traumatized by that, and he had a fear of being drafted and was seen as weak for doing so. And you know, it just brought up a lot of those societal issues from back in the day. As I stated earlier, our protagonist, Stella, her mom, you know, left them and left her in a state of confusion. I mean, she's already a teen girl, you know, with all the hormones, not really comfortable in her own skin. And I like how they showed that, and they showed her kind of being this insecure girl, and you know, she wasn't the popular one. She, you know, she was dealing with all this stuff at home, and then, you know, she was clearly an outcast. So they did all that very, very well. And they even touched on racism too with the Mexican kid I mentioned earlier. Just remembered his name's Ramon, but yeah, they were calling him Wetback because, you know, he said that he was just following the harvest, living out of his car, you know, doing the whole deal to avoid the cops and, you know, not get drafted. So yeah, the kids trashed his car and, you know, painted the words Wetback on the car. And, you know, that's a pretty derogatory racial slur if you didn't know. So yeah, to see that, it was like, wow, I can't believe they put that in the movie. But it was interesting because, you know, you start realizing like, oh, okay, they're actually taking, you know, this history and applying it in a way that kind of makes a perfect breeding ground for a horror. And I think they did it brilliantly, actually, you know, to mesh real world societal issues that were happening at that time with the fantastical horror abject element. Like, it's just perfect in my opinion. Like, that's how you do it. It's a theme that you see often in horror, actually. Maybe not in the same way, but when our characters are in despair or have this like major uncertainty in their lives, you know, that's when they're most vulnerable. So that's when the demons attack, you know. So I really like the way that it was done in this movie. I thought it was just a great movie overall. It was a lot more intense than I had anticipated it was going to be. I thought it was just gonna be similar to like Goosebumps, but yeah, in terms of it being an adaptation, I thought they did a great job. You know, it can never be exactly the same. If it is, it's not an adaptation, right? So I thought they did a great job in, like, you know, making tweaks here and there, and it still maintaining the main idea, right? So yeah, if you liked the books growing up, you'll probably still really like this movie. What was also really great about this movie was that I didn't recognize any of the actors, so it was kind of refreshing, you know, to see new faces, and they were all pretty talented. The acting was great. I thought the standout was the actress who played Stella. I don't know her name, but yeah, she did a great job. She was very believable in, you know, sometimes my problem with kid actors is that sometimes when they cry or they act scared, or, you know, it just looks so fake. Like when I watched, oh, what was that movie called? La Llorona? The little girl in that movie was terrible. I thought she was a terrible actress. Granted, the girl Stella in this movie, she's older, so there's that, but she's still a younger actress, and she did a fantastic job. Believed every second of it, believed every tear, and yeah, the other actors were good as well, but one of the funnier guys who played Chuck, he had his moments where he overacted a bit, but I mean, I think by the end of the movie it was okay. Like, he was doing a great job. So yeah, great job to all the newer actors that I didn't know. You know, as much as I liked the movie and thought it was well done, there was one little nitpick that I did have, and it's not really a big deal. It's just I felt that there were certain plot points in the movie that were kind of derivative of other horror movies or television that I've seen before. Specifically, like when the kids just started disappearing from the town. Nobody knew where they were looking for them, and only certain other kids knew what had happened and what kind of supernatural being was behind it. Does that ring a bell for any other horror fans out there? Of course it does, because it's it. It's straight up it, and I'm not saying they copied it like beat for beat. Not at all, but it's definitely similar in that regard. There's also a part where our main characters go into the haunted house and are able to transport into the past, which it kind of works more like they're entering a different reality somewhat, but it's just the past, and they're able to kind of sense what's happening in the present time. It's really cool, but it's something that I've seen before. And actually I've been watching the X-Files show, and there's an episode where that exact storyline happens, and Mulder and Scully are able to kind of go in between present and past, and it's interesting because it also has to do with a haunted house and ghosts. It's a really good episode, but yeah, this seemed very reminiscent to that. So yeah, I do, give this movie kind of a break with that, just because they were able to pull everything together really well. So I definitely still appreciate the movie, even though it's a little derivative. It's just great fun if you're into horror. If you're not into horror, maybe skip it. But anyways, guys, if you like this video, give me a like or subscribe, or both. I don't hate it. And you can catch me on Twitter and on Instagram at PopDotComix, and I guess I'll catch you over there. Later.